Amazing news, everybody! Lawmakers in House Representatives and the Senate are passing a brand new relief bill, and the Biden administration wants to approve several recovery rebate cards. You want to listen up, folks, and learn how to receive this stimulus check. The Biden administration wants to approve rebate cards, which could actually help you deal with the rising cost of living. Here's some good news. The Senate Democrats are preparing for summer action, everybody, on their climate tax reform and prescriptions bill. Democrats are working behind the scenes on the new version of the bill while aiming to get it passed by a new deadline. Schumer and his staff are also working with Senate parliamentarian to help tee up a vote, and any bill advanced this summer would be slimmer than the original proposed version. The bill would be focused on lowering prescription costs, reducing the deficit, raising taxes on the wealthy, and boosting energy sources, both clean and domestic. Senate Democrat Ron Wyden, who chairs the tax-focused Finance Committee, told reporters this week, "I'm spending a significant amount of time every day on it. I can't get all into negotiations. I believe we're going to get there." And Schumer makes these calls. There are signs that talks are getting more specific. Manchin and Chuck Schumer are doing line by line over what a deal could look like, building a potential agreement from the ground up rather than rehashing agreements from last year. According to Democrats familiar with the matter, much of the recent focus is on energy policy. Joe Manchin indicated he would not support a bill that sends direct payment to companies that produce clean energy for consumer use, drawing an important line in the negotiations. Manchin was the first Democratic senator to warn about potentially rising inflation and was widely dismissed by his colleagues last year when he raised those concerns. Of the provisions being considered for a new party line bill, increases in prescription reform would bring in new revenues, but the energy component could require hundreds of billions of dollars in new spending. The Senate Democrat Debbie Stabenow said that despite the pileup of critical issues, there's good conversations going on between Manchin and Schumer. Schumer said our talks with Manchin are continuing. Schumer and Nancy Pelosi met with Biden to discuss it. What are your thoughts on this, everybody? Are there going to be negotiations for more stimulus relief? I believe there will. And there is some news that multiple news outlets reported that the Biden administration has recently mulled over a new stimulus plan of sending Americans rebate cards to help offset the rise of gasoline. The Washington Post wrote that the senior White House aides have recently revisited the plan to send gas rebate cards to U.S. households after the administration decided against the move months earlier. Fox Business reported that the Biden administration was considering the rebate cards. One sticking point is that officials are reportedly concerned that consumers would use the cards for purchases for items other than gas. The other is that recent shortages in the chip industry may create an obstacle in physically producing the cards. CNN also cited an official close to the matter, as saying that administering cards and speculation about how the money would be spent are the main obstacles currently preventing the plan from being greenlit. But some financial experts have blamed an influx of stimulus cash for causing an imbalance in supply and demand. In an attempt to better balance the supply and demand ratio, the Federal Reserve announced its largest rate hike in 28 years. This move was done to make consumers spend less because of the higher rates. Americans have more stimulus money to spend and could potentially work around this logic. As of Friday, the national average price of gas was $5. Early this week, AAA recorded the highest figure ever for regular gas at $5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome back to the committee. Chair Powell, it's good to see you again. I want to follow up on this issue of this imbalance between labor demand and supply, as you were just referring to. According to the latest figures from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there were 5.5 million more jobs in April than available workers. And so we have, as a result, an extremely competitive labor market and very strong wage growth. But inflation is even higher than wage growth, so that's wiping out worker gains and leaving a lot of folks with what amounts to a pay cut as they, at the same time, try to figure out how to pay for higher prices for gas and food. So let me ask you this, Chair Powell, with all of that in mind, what is the basis for the argument that wages are too high and that they need to come down in order to rein in inflation?
So it isn't that wages themselves are too high, it's that the rate of growth of wages is not consistent, and I'll explain this, not consistent with 2% inflation over time. So, of course, it's great when wages go up, and we want them to go up. We want people to get, strong wage increases, but at a certain point, wages become high enough that companies start raising prices, and you wind up getting high inflation. So if you just kind of reverse engineer what level of wage increases would be consistent with 2% inflation over the longer term, today's wage increases, if you look across the numbers of measures that we look at, they're significantly above that. Now, there's some evidence that they're flattening out. Particularly average hourly earnings, there's some evidence that that measure of wages is flattening out so that it's no longer going up. So it's really not about reducing wages, it's just having a more sustainable pace of increases.
And what would you expect if wages started to stabilize, as you say, they stop increases? How long would you expect it to be before the prices that consumers are paying would start to go down?
So
are they ever going to go down?
It depends in prices don't have to go down for inflation to go down. So if prices remain at the same level and inflation goes to zero. But it depends on different businesses. In some service, in parts of the service economy, labor costs are a very large portion of costs, and so you would think that gets passed through very quickly into prices. And so we would think we would think that pass through should be shown fairly quickly in some parts of the economy, in others less so. But over time, we would want wages to be moving up at the highest sustainable rate that's possible.
Right.
And consistent with 2% inflation.
And of course, at the same time, the economy, we've got this very, very strong labor.
Gentleman from California, Mr. Lamalfa, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's become painfully obvious in recent months how important energy and the energy supply is in all aspects of our lives here in the United States and our allies around the world. The effect of not enough energy, indeed, has been very harmful to our economy. Yet we're in a space where we have so much abundance, so much potential, and so much we were doing just before this administration came into place. Of course, we're sitting on the largest untapped oil reserve in the world, amazing enough here in the United States. We've been utilizing this properly. Instead of launching on an assault on domestic energy production, our union would be in a much better state. Of course, as we know, on the first day in office, President Biden shut down the Keystone Pipeline on and off over the years, suspended pending oil and gas leases, and halted domestic energy production, which stopped exports on liquefied natural gas to our allies overseas. We've seen how important that is when Europe has become so reliant upon Russian natural gas. Poland recently just cut off supply buying from Russia so they would be able to not be so dependent. The Germans too, other Eastern European countries. Of course, now what we've seen since all this, lack of exploration, shortness of